No maid could put up with the Millionaire's twins until she said something that changed everything. Before we get started, I want to know where you're watching from. Leave a comment and let me know. It's super important for me to understand how far our stories are reaching. And if you enjoy heartwarming love stories, go ahead and subscribe to the channel. That way, you won't miss any new videos and you'll also help the channel grow, so more people can feel inspired and moved by these stories. Let's do this together. The cold autumn breeze blew hard that early morning in Greenwich, Connecticut, making dry leaves swirl along the sidewalk that led to the imposing Hayes mansion. Elena Dawson held tightly onto the strap of her worn backpack, her fingers slightly red from the biting cold that felt like more than just a physical sensation. It mirrored her uncertain and unstable life. She wore a plain beige coat that had seen better days and a pair of faded jeans that clashed with the opulence around her. Her blue eyes, tired but determined, stared at the massive wooden door before her, painted in pristine white, framed by Corinthian columns that gave the place an air of majesty and coldness. She glanced once more at the crumpled paper in her hand. The job ad for a part-time housekeeper with availability to help with the mansion's twins. The formal wording and lack of family details were a silent red flag that this wouldn't be just another job. Elena took a deep breath, gathered her strength, and rang the doorbell. The door was opened by a tall woman with fair skin, her hair pulled into a tight bun, and a gaze that seemed to scan every inch of Elena with calculated coldness. The housekeeper, as she introduced herself shortly after, showed no trace of warmth. "Name?" she asked with no smile, her voice firm and impersonal. "Elena Dawson," she replied, trying to hide the mix of nervousness and hope in her voice. "I'm here about the job opening." The housekeeper crossed her arms, sizing her up for what felt like an eternity. 9 others came before you. None lasted more than 3 days. Elena's heart tightened, but she didn't back down. "I'd like to try. I really need this job." "Don't fool yourself," the housekeeper said, almost with a hint of compassion. "The twins are difficult. 5 years old, motherless since birth. Mr. Hayes doesn't meet anyone in person. The instructions are written down. You'll do what's in the folder and nothing else." Elena nodded without hesitation. She had nowhere to go back to. The boarding house where she stayed was cold, and her rent was overdue. She accepted the challenge, even without knowing what was ahead. The housekeeper led her down wide, silent hallways where thick carpet muffled their steps and old portraits of stern-looking ancestors seemed to watch their every move. The air was heavy, filled with a blend of expensive lavender and absinthe. On a white marble table lay a black folder with a gold label that read, "Instructions, Elena Dawson." The housekeeper handed it to her with a slight nod and disappeared down the hallway. Alone, Elena opened the folder. What she found wasn't a simple list of chores. The first page held a handwritten note with strong, almost cutting handwriting. "Do not enter my personal spaces. Do not interfere in the children's routine. Do not expect recognition. Just do your job. Signed, Connor Hayes." A chill ran down her spine. That was the welcome she received from the most powerful man in that house. Elena closed her eyes for a moment, remembering her grandmother's words, who had taught her to persevere and fight without losing her dignity. Even when everything seemed lost, you don't need to be accepted. You just need to be needed. With a tight chest, Elena tied her hair into a messy bun, put on the gray apron she found folded inside the folder, and headed to the east wing of the mansion where the twins spent most of their time. She didn't know yet that those 2 little girls would be the biggest challenge and the greatest new beginning of her life. Elena walked down the quiet hallway of the Hayes mansion, each of her steps muffled by the thick carpet covering the wooden floor. The late afternoon light filtered through the tall windows, casting long, cold shadows that seemed to form invisible bars around her. The weight of the black folder with the instructions in one hand and the worn backpack in the other made her shoulders slump a little more, as if she were carrying not just objects, but also the anxiety of facing the unknown. When she finally reached the door to the room where the twins spent most of their time, she took a deep breath, trying to calm her racing heart. She opened the door slowly and stepped inside. The room was spacious and filled with light from large windows overlooking the garden, but the atmosphere felt empty, cold, as if the lack of human warmth had turned the place barren. Luxurious toys were scattered around chaotically, contrasting with the heavy silence hanging in the air. The girls were sitting on the floor, back to back, both with platinum blonde hair and deep blue eyes that watched the newcomer with suspicion. They looked like the picture of innocence, but their expressions were anything but. These were children marked by pain, who had hidden their wounds behind defiant stares and aggressive behavior. "Hi," Elena said, in the softest voice she could manage. "My name is Elena. I'm here to help take care of the house, and maybe we can play a little too." The twins didn't answer. Lily just glanced quickly at Claire, who lifted her chin as if daring anyone to try and get close. Suddenly, Lily stood up and slammed the door shut with force, the sound echoing down the hallway. Claire remained seated, watching with crossed arms and a closed-off expression. In the days that followed, Elena realized that life with the girls wouldn't be easy. They hid her personal items, like the cleaning bucket, which reappeared hanging from the ceiling fan, something impossible for two small children, suggesting the prank had malicious intent and the help of someone else. At every turn, Elena felt she was being tested, challenged. They laughed when she slipped on water they had spilled on the kitchen floor on purpose, and mocked her when the housekeeper scolded her for not keeping the girls in check. Unlike the other housekeepers who had left crying or fuming, Elena never raised her voice, never begged for respect. She observed in silence, trying to decode the language of that childhood pain. One particularly difficult afternoon, Elena entered the girls' room and found torn books on the floor. Claire was crying softly, hiding her face in her hands, while Lily stared out the window, emotionless. "Are you hurt?" Elena asked, approaching slowly, feeling the weight of sorrow in the room. Claire shook her head. Elena knelt down and picked up the book with the torn cover. It was a bedtime storybook titled Mommy and Me. Her chest tightened with pain and compassion. They're not mean, Elena thought. They just don't know how to ask for help. She sat on the floor with the girls, with no rush, no words. The silence became a safe space. It was Lily who finally broke it, her voice low and bitter. "The other lady said we're broken. And do you believe her?" Elena asked. Claire wiped her face with her sleeve and mumbled, "Daddy thinks we're no good too. He doesn't look at us. Just tells us to shut up." A tear slid down Elena's cheek, but she didn't let the girls see it. "Silence hurts more than anything," she said firmly, "but I'm here and I'm not leaving." Neither of them replied, but they didn't push her away either. For the first time in that cold house, Elena felt she was stepping not just into a room, but into the wounded hearts of those children. That night, walking down the hallway, Elena noticed a crude crayon drawing taped to the wall. 3 stick figures holding hands, 2 small, 1 bigger, and in the corner, written in crooked letters, the words, "She stayed, she stopped." A lump forming in her throat. She understood that she wasn't just being tested. She was being chosen, and a journey that would change. Everyone's life in that house had just begun. The morning after that quiet moment in the hallway arrived with a biting cold that seemed to seep through the walls of the Hayes mansion. Elena woke before sunrise, her heart still heavy with the image of the clumsy drawing and the crooked phrase the twins had left for her. The silent promise in that message seemed to echo through the entire house, But something deeper also stirred in her chest, a mixture of fear, hope, and the certainty that her life would never be the same. She descended the stairs carefully, not wanting to wake the rest of the house. For a moment, she lost herself in the absolute silence of the place, where every shadow seemed to guard a secret. The housekeeper had already begun her day, moving through the hallways with calculated steps and a stern expression that showed how much discipline the house demanded, not only from the children, but from everyone living under its roof. In Connor Hayes' office, the double doors remained closed like an impenetrable fortress where he hid from the world and from himself. His routine involved spending hours locked in there, surrounded by papers, screens, and decisions that seemed to take more from him than they gave. He didn't speak to his daughters, didn't share in their small joys or sorrows. His presence was reduced to brief messages and commands relayed through the housekeeper, a cold, painful distance that filled the house with a nearly tangible emptiness. That night, as Elena was collecting the dishes from the small dining room where the girls ate dinner, she heard muffled voices coming from the room next door. She stopped, heart pounding, recognizing the low, almost whispering tone of Claire, the more sensitive twin. "He doesn't even remember that Mom died because of us," Claire said, her voice trembling, eyes lost in the darkness of the room. Lily replied in a hurried whisper, "We screamed for her to come back, but she slipped because I was yelling." "It was my fault," Claire insisted, tears starting to fall. "He hasn't looked at us since that day." Elena leaned against the wall, her breath caught in her throat. The words of that little girl hit her with such force that she felt suffocated, as if she were reliving her own childhood marked by the loss of her grandmother. She remembered the void left by the absence of that safe hug, the unjust guilt she had carried like a shadow for years. The pain she felt was the same pain she now witnessed in that house, an absence more devastating than any scream, a silence that corrodes. Kneeling beside the girls, Elena spoke softly, trying to offer the safety she knew they had never received. "None of this is your fault. Your mom's death was a tragedy, an unfair twist of fate. But it doesn't define who you are." Claire sniffled, still not lifting her face. "I know it's hard to believe, but you deserve love, care, and a safe place to grow." Lily finally looked at her, eyes full of tears, and whispered, "Why won't he stay? Why won't Daddy stay?" The lump in Elena's throat tightened. She couldn't offer a simple answer. That night, while silently folding laundry, she heard Connor's tense footsteps in the hallway. The office doors opened and closed with their usual heavy sound. He passed by her without looking, but something in the air had shifted. Elena didn't look away. "Mr. Hayes," she said in a calm but steady voice, "your daughters cry at night because they miss the one who should be here." He stopped abruptly, took a deep breath, and turned his head. The look he met wasn't accusing. It was from someone who was tired of pretending. "That's none of your business," he replied, voice low and full of pain. "Then fire me," she said. But someone had to say it. The silence that followed was thick. His eyes searched hers, weighing every unspoken word, until he simply turned his back and climbed the stairs. In that moment, Elena realized she had planted a seed, a small sign that even in the deepest solitude, truth can begin to bloom. As she walked through the hallway, she noticed the crayon drawing of the three figures, once crumpled on the floor, had been carefully put back up on the wall. A small victory in the midst of so much silence, and in that simple gesture, Elena saw the first crack in the wall surrounding that family, and knew her work, though difficult, had only just begun. The morning light streamed softly through the wide windows of the twins' bedroom, casting delicate shadows over the toys scattered across the floor. Elena woke before the girls, feeling a mix of anxiety and determination. There was something different about that day, a subtle shift she couldn't yet name, but that her heart had already sensed. As she carefully made the bed, her eyes rested on the little sandals lined up neatly by the door, something that, until now, had felt impossible to hope for. Downstairs, in the vast hallway of the mansion, silence still reigned, except for the gentle, steady sound of Elena's footsteps as she made her way to the kitchen to prepare breakfast. Once cold and impersonal, the kitchen now held the warm, sweet aroma of pancakes and fresh strawberries cut into heart shapes, small touches her grandmother had always said could brighten even the grayest day. As she stirred the batter, Elena felt a quiet warmth rise in her chest, a fragile but real kind of hope. Later, when the girls walked into the kitchen, the difference was impossible to miss. Lily and Claire, who had once avoided any form of contact or affection, seemed visibly more at ease. There was a shy glimmer in their eyes, a spark that, despite the fear and hurt, was beginning to open up to the world. While organizing toys, Elena saw Lily walk past her and, in a surprising move, push the water bucket with her foot. The liquid spilled slowly onto the carpet, and Elena might have panicked, like in the past, but not this time. Instead, she set the cloth down and knelt in the middle of the mess, looking into the girl's eyes with a calm firmness she hadn't shown before. "That's enough," she said, her voice steady but full of kindness. The girls froze. Silence fell like a heavy veil. Elena took a deep breath and continued, heart pounding, "I'm not leaving, because no pain scares me more than being forgotten." Those words were like a bridge across the abyss between them. Lily and Claire stared at her, surprised, unsure how to respond. It was the first time someone didn't give up on them, didn't run from the fear and anger they used to protect themselves. The next day, when Elena entered the room to wake the girls, everything had changed. The shoes that were once scattered and dirty were now lined up neatly at the edge of the bed. A small, simple gesture, but to Elena, it meant more than words could express. In the hallway, she crossed paths with the housekeeper, who shot her a look, suspicious, almost disbelieving. Double quotes, they ... lined up the shoes? She murmured, as if such a simple act broke some unspoken rule or was simply unimaginable. Elena just smiled, tired, but filled with hope. At lunchtime, Claire, for the first time, quietly said thank you when handed her glass of juice. Elena pretended not to react, tucking away that tiny victory in her heart. That night, as she walked upstairs with a blanket in her arms, Elena noticed something unexpected. The door to Connor's office was ajar. She paused, hesitating, but curiosity got the better of her. She peeked in and saw Connor seated in front of his computer screens, his shirt slightly wrinkled, his face worn with exhaustion, his expression distant. He was watching a paused video, a recording of the playroom, showing the moment Elena knelt down in the middle of the mess with the girls. He sat in silence, showing no emotion, but he hadn't turned the video off. It was as if he was trying to absorb every gesture, every smile, every moment of life she had brought into his daughter's world. In that instant, Elena knew something had begun to change. The wall of silence and distance Connor had built around himself was starting to crack, and it was the sound of laughter and tenderness he'd spent so long avoiding that was finally drawing his gaze inward. But this change was just the beginning. Something much bigger and more challenging was coming, and both Elena and Connor would have to prepare to face the ghosts of the past and the fears of the present. On Saturday morning, the Hayes mansion seemed a little less somber. There was the scent of waffles in the air, the sound of soft laughter drifting from the kitchen, and for one brief moment, the heavy silence that always ruled the house seemed to have taken the day off. Elena spun around with the twins on the marble floor, all three of them in socks, sliding gently across the small rugs while an old song played from a cell phone resting on the counter. Lily held a wooden spoon like a microphone. Claire clapped along to the rhythm, awkward but smiling. It was an improvised dance, silly even, but there was life there. Pure laughter, good noise, something that Kitchen hadn't heard in a long time. Faster, Elena, Claire shouted, spinning in place. Elena laughed, her loose hair slipping from the bun. Only if you can catch me first. That's when the kitchen door opened with a sharp thud. The sound was enough to cut the music. The twins froze. Elena. Did 2. Connor Hayes stood in the doorway, crisp dark suit, cold eyes, clenched jaw. The late morning light outlined the expression of absolute disapproval on his face. "What is going on here?" he asked, his voice low but hard as stone. Girls took a step back. Elena straightened, trying to catch her breath. "We were playing," she said. "They were happy." "You weren't hired to play," he interrupted, stepping forward. "This is a workplace. You're crossing the line." The silence turned heavy. Elena looked at the girls. They were now hiding behind one another as if bracing for punishment. She took a deep breath, her face still flushed from dancing, but her eyes steady. "They don't need more lines, Mr. Hayes," she said clearly. "They need a father." The words shot across the room like an arrow. Connor froze. His eyes hardened further for a moment, as if he couldn't believe what he just heard. It wasn't just defiance. It was a mirror. A reflection of everything he didn't want to face. No one had dared speak to him like that. Not since his wife died. Not since he locked himself inside an emotional armor that kept everyone at bay. "You know nothing about me," he said, his voice low, too cold to be anger. "I know enough," Elena replied. "If you knew how much it hurts them to live in this emptiness, maybe you'd dance with them too." Claire stifled a sob. Lily, without thinking, grabbed the hem of her sister's dress. Connor looked away for a moment, as if even his daughter's eyes burned. He didn't answer. He simply turned and walked out. But unlike before, his steps weren't firm. They were hesitant, like someone carrying something they no longer knew how to hold. Inside, Elena trembled. She knew what she had done. She knew it could be the end, that she could be let go at any moment. But something inside her, something that had been growing stronger every day, no longer allowed her to stay silent in the face of someone else's pain, especially the pain of 2 little girls who didn't know how to ask for help. Hours later, as she passed the security room, she noticed one of the monitors frozen on the footage, the dance, paused right before the interruption. Connor was sitting there again, elbows on his knees, face in his hands. But he hadn't deleted the video. He was watching. And for the first time, Elena realized the wall around him had cracked. And it was the sound of laughter, the kind he'd never listened to until now, that had broken through. What she didn't yet know was that this confrontation would only be the first. Because to heal someone who has lived too long with silence, love would have to learn how to shout, and the past, how to return. The storm began before the sky had even gone completely dark. The wind howled against the windows of the Hayes mansion, making the trees outside bend and sway. The first drops tapped against the glass like anxious fingers, and the house, always silent by nature, seemed to be holding its breath. Elena was just finishing picking up toys from the living room rug when she heard a scream from upstairs. She ran, her heart already pounding before she even reached the hallway. Claire was sitting on the floor of her room, knees pulled to her chest, face buried, trembling. "Claire?" Elena knelt beside her gently. "Hey, sweetie, breathe with me. Look at me." But the little girl couldn't. Each clap of thunder seemed to break something inside her. Tears streamed down her face as her breath became shallow and erratic. Lily stood at the door, frightened. She gets like this when it storms. Ever since the hospital. Before Elena could answer, Firm footsteps echoed across the floor. Connor appeared in the doorway, his tie loosened, eyes restless. "What happened?" he asked, trying to keep his voice steady, but there was a hint of fear there and guilt. "It's just a panic attack," Elena said, staying calm. "She needs to feel safe." Connor approached slowly and crouched beside his daughter. He reached out and touched her shoulder, hesitant. "Claire, Daddy's here." The girl turned, eyes wide in panic. In a sudden, impulsive gesture, she pushed his hand away and screamed, "You're not my daddy. You're just a madman." The impact was immediate. The silence that followed was more devastating than the scream itself. Connor froze as if he'd taken a blow straight to the chest. Lily stepped back, alarmed. Elena remained silent, watching the raw pain spread in his eyes. Claire sobbed in short, uneven gasps, her body still tense. But now it was more than fear of the storm. It was fear of abandonment, rejection, the kind of loneliness that lives where there should be comfort. Connor stood up slowly, backing away. He walked to the corner of the room and placed his hands on the wall, his back to everyone. For a long moment, he said nothing, until his voice emerged low and broken. "She's right. That's all I am, a madman who doesn't know how to be a father." Elena stood, eyes brimming with tears. She approached slowly. For the first time, he didn't pull away. "I wake up every day wondering how someone like me is supposed to take care of two lives so small. I hide in that office thinking it's the best I can do, that not getting in the way is enough, but everything I do ends in disappointment." He turned then, eyes glassy for the first time. His voice cracked, a betrayal of the wall he'd always kept up. "The only person who still smiles at me in this house is you." Elena said nothing. The storm raged outside, but inside, a different silence had taken hold. A silence of understanding, of unexpected connection. She didn't step closer, didn't touch him, but she didn't look away either. And he, for once, didn't run. "Then start over, Connor," she said finally, her tone firm but kind. Not with perfection, just with presence. Claire, still curled up, looked toward her father. Her voice was weak but audible. "Are you leaving tomorrow?" He crouched again, slower this time. "No, I'm going to try to stay." The child didn't smile, but she didn't push him away. Elena picked up a blanket and gently covered Claire, her hands steady, her gaze saying more than words ever could. Lily lay down beside her sister and silence died as Connor left the room. He paused in the doorway, head lowered. "Thank you," he said, almost a whisper. "It wasn't for you," Elena replied honestly. "It was for them." But in that moment, both knew something had shifted. It wasn't love. Not yet. It was respect. It was exposed wounds. It was the first crack in a structure that could no longer hold out, and it was only the beginning. The morning sun filtered gently through the stained glass windows of the Hayes mansion, carrying with it an unusual softness, as if even the light knew this day was different. In the back garden, balloons were tied between the trees, and a small table covered in floral cloth stood waiting. Simple yet full of intention. The twins were turning 6. It was their first birthday since Elena had arrived, and according to the housekeeper, the first time music had played outside the house. Elena was in the kitchen, putting the final touches together when Lily appeared at the door, her eyes shining. "Elena, can I show you something?" Elena wiped her hands and followed the little girl to the living room. Claire was there, wearing a crooked paper crown, her hands hidden behind her back. The two glanced at each other before revealing a handmade envelope, blue crayon, messy hearts. "It's for you," Claire said shyly, "so you don't leave." Inside was a heart-shaped card that read, "Stay with us forever." Elena felt her eyes sting. She wanted to laugh and cry at the same time. Before she could speak, Connor appeared in the doorway. He wore a light shirt, no jacket, sleeves rolled to the elbows. His hair was slightly more tousled than usual, and there was something in his eyes Elena couldn't yet name. "I saw what they made," he said with a restrained smile. "Elena, I'd like to talk." "Can we?" She nodded. He led her to the library, a wide room with dark wood shelves and the smell of old books. On the desk was a printed contract, folded in half, a pen beside it. "This isn't just a form," he began plainly. "It's an invitation. I want you to stay. Not out of duty, but as part of this house. As the girl's full-time nanny, if that still makes sense to you." Elena looked at the paper, then at him. There was sincerity in his voice, but also a rare kind of hesitation, as if he were offering far more than he could put into words. "Are you sure?" she asked. "Because if I stay, I won't pretend not to see what still needs to change." Connor nodded, never breaking eye contact. "That's exactly why I want you to stay." Later, when the cake was brought out to the garden, the twins were buzzing with excitement. The staff stood off to the side, watching without interfering. It was the first time they sang Happy Birthday with laughter that came from deep inside, without fear of being heard. When it was time to cut the cake, Connor stepped forward holding the girl's hands. "Dad, let Elena cut it," said. "Lily." "Yeah," Claire added. "She was with us every day." Elena hesitated, surprised. But Connor simply nodded. And in that moment, she felt something she had never felt inside that house: belonging, not as an employee, but as someone who was seen, chosen. That night, after everything was cleaned and the mansion had gone quiet again, Elena stood alone in the kitchen, putting away the last dishes. The light was low. The air still smelled of cake and blown-out candles. Connor appeared at the door, leaning against the frame, hands in his pockets. "Do you have a minute?" he asked. She nodded. He stepped inside slowly, as if crossing an invisible boundary. He sat at the table. His face looked lighter, but his eyes, they held the tension of someone carrying words they'd never said aloud. "Do you believe," he began, voice low, "that someone like me can love again?" Elena was quiet for a moment. That question wasn't about him and her. It was about pain, about guilt, about what remains of someone who's built walls around their heart and forgotten where they put the key. She walked over, sat across from him, and answered honestly, "Yes, but you don't start by loving someone else. You start by relearning how to love yourself." He didn't reply, but his eyes shone differently, as if, for the first time, he believed there might be a way back. That night, nothing more was said, but everything was understood, and what they didn't yet know was that to love again requires more than courage. It requires facing the past, even when it knocks at the door disguised as the future. The next morning, the Hayes mansion was quiet, almost serene. The twins played in the garden with colorful blocks. Connor reviewed some papers in the living room with the door open, and Elena fluffed the pillows on the sofa, enjoying that rare moment of peace. Then the doorbell rang, sharp, abrupt, a sound that didn't match the softness of the day. Elena looked up, curious. Unannounced visitors were uncommon. Connor rose slowly, a trace of tension in his shoulders, as if he already knew what he'd find on the other side. When he opened the door, she appeared, Madison Blake. Tall, slender, platinum blonde hair in perfectly styled waves, wearing an expensive beige tailored suit, dark sunglasses, and a smile that looked more like a mask. Everything about her was polished, calculated, fragrant, but behind the gloss was something sharp, something that observed like a buyer assessing what's worth keeping and what isn't. "Connor," she said, removing her sunglasses with a delicate motion. "May I come in?" He hesitated, but stepped aside. "Madison?" What are you doing here? I came to see all of you, she said, gliding into the house. I heard it's the girl's birthday, and I thought maybe it was time to fix what's been left undone. When she spotted Elena watching quietly from a distance, Madison took no more than 2 seconds to assess her from head to toe. Then she tilted her chin, offering a thin, insincere smile. And this must be the new home decor? Or just another live-in assistant? Elena didn't respond. She stood tall, face calm. But inside, something tightened. This is Elena, Connor said, voice neutral. She takes care of the girls. Ah, Madison said, turning back to him. Takes care of or replaces. Lily and Claire appeared on the stairs, curiosity in their eyes. When they saw Madison, they froze. The joy slipped from their faces like air from a punctured balloon. Hi, my little darlings, Madison said, her voice sugar-coated, but hollow. The girls didn't answer. Lily ducked behind the railing. Claire clutched the hem of her dress. Connor noticed, but he said nothing. Elena looked at him, waiting for a word, a gesture, anything to break the discomfort of this uninvited visit. But he averted his eyes, and that small gesture was enough. Elena understood. In the back room, she calmly began folding her clothes. She placed her uniform on top of the small suitcase she'd brought on her first day. There were no tears, no anger, just the familiar ache of someone who's always known the way out without needing directions. As she zipped the suitcase closed, she heard soft footsteps behind her. You're leaving? Claire asked, voice tight with emotion. Elena turned. Claire stood there, eyes glassy, hugging a stuffed animal tightly against her chest. Sometimes, when grown-ups don't take a stand, we have to know when it's time to go, Elena said. Gently, Claire ran to her and wrapped her arms around her waist. You are our home, she whispered. Elena closed her eyes for a moment, holding back tears. Those 4 words weighed more than any contract, more than any paycheck, more than Connor's silence. Lily appeared next, saying nothing. She simply took her sister's hand and stood beside Elena. In the hallway, Connor watched from afar, still, frozen by his own indecision. But the image of those 3 embraced, silent, united would stay with him like a scar he didn't yet know how to name. Elena walked past him, suitcase in hand. And in that moment, she wasn't the help. She was the woman he had let go. Without needing a word. But the words would come, and when they did, it would be too late to pretend nothing had happened. The day broke heavy over Greenwich. The gray sky mirrored what was to come. Inside the Hayes mansion, Connor walked alone through the still dark living room, his steps slow, his mind restless. Elena's absence was palpable. The soft scent of the soap she used no longer floated in the hallway. The girls' muffled laughter no longer echoed in the kitchen. Everything felt suspended, like a house holding its breath before collapse. Sat on the library sofa and aimlessly scrolled through the gallery of old photos on his phone. Then he stopped on one, a forgotten image taken by accident. Elena, kneeling in the garden, hands covered in soil, wearing a quiet smile. Lily and Claire danced around her with daisies in their hair, free and light in a way he had never seen before. The golden light of late afternoon touched the 3 of them as if the universe had wanted to preserve that exact moment. Connor stared at the screen for long minutes. For the first time, the emptiness inside him felt unbearable. He stood, walked into the office, and opened his long-abandoned personal social media account. It still had thousands of followers, investors, old friends, partners, journalists, all used to the flawless, untouchable Connor Hayes. He attached the photo, took a deep breath, and typed, "Family isn't made by blood. It's made by the ones who stay when everyone else walks away." He posted. The silence after the click was deafening. but something inside him loosened. For the first time, he wasn't afraid of being seen as he truly was. For the first time, he chose truth over appearance. Within 20 minutes, his phone blew up with notifications. Comments poured in, some emotional, others shocked, a few skeptical. It was the kind of post that spread, not for being scandalous, but for being real. Madison arrived before 9 a.m., furious. She wore dark sunglasses and red lipstick, her heels echoing through the foyer like an accusation. She pushed open the door and found Connor in the living room, coffee mug in hand, seemingly calm. "Have you lost your mind?" she snapped. "Do you have any idea what you've just done?" Connor looked up but stayed seated. "You just ruined your own name, Connor. You exposed the girls. You exposed that woman." An emotional meltdown for the whole internet to see. "This is going to destroy the image we spent years building." He sipped his coffee before answering. "You built that image, at the cost of the girl's silence. At the cost of everyone's pain you deemed beneath you." She let out a cold, mocking laugh. "You've actually fallen for her, haven't you? The maid with the sad eyes? That's what you want the world to see now." Connor stood, his gaze steady now. "I don't know what I am to her, but I know what she was to my daughters. The only constant, the only presence, the only truth." Madison clutched her purse, speechless. "You're throwing everything away." "No," he said, voice quiet but resolute. "I'm rebuilding, and this time from the inside out." She left without another word, because deep down she knew the control had slipped right through her hands. That afternoon, Connor parked at the school 15 minutes early. No suit, just dark jeans and rolled-up sleeves, enough to turn heads among the other parents. Many greeted him with nervous smiles, clearly fresh off reading the Post. He simply nodded back, eyes fixed on the gate. The twins came out near the end, hand in hand, tired expressions on their faces. No spark in their eyes. They were searching for something. For someone. Connor stepped forward. Claire saw him first. She froze. Lily did the same. Their eyes were confused, almost fearful, as if unsure whether he was there as their father or as the man who let Elena go. Then, appearing behind him, walking slowly with her hair tied back and a cream coat over her shoulders, was her Elena. The girls didn't hesitate. They broke into a run, shouting her name. "Elena!" She dropped to her knees immediately, arms wide open, eyes already brimming with tears. They threw themselves at her, clinging as if to reclaim everything they'd lost in the past 24 hours. Elena held them tight. She said nothing, because everything had already been said in that moment. Connor stood back, eyes wet, breath unsteady. But now there was peace. For the first time in a very long time, Elena lifted her gaze to him over the girl's shoulders. He stepped forward. He wanted to say everything, but he didn't. He just smiled, and for the first time, she smiled back. The spring afternoon arrived gently, painting the sky in warm shades of orange and gold. The garden of the Hayes mansion, once silent and imposing, now pulsed with the joyful presence of Lily and Claire, running between freshly planted flowers, their laughter echoing like music for those who knew how to listen. The daisies they had picked, delicately arranged in small ceramic vases, symbolized a deep change taking place inside that house and in every heart within it. Elena walked into the living room with light steps, her face lit by a genuine smile, the kind born from months of silent battles and quiet victories. In her arms, she carried a stack of heavy books titles on child psychology, emotional development, and therapeutic care. These books weren't just objects, they were tools, symbols of a new path she had chosen, a journey of healing, learning, and above all, transformative love. The twins, now more at peace, explored the space with the curiosity of a childhood that had once been stolen from them. Their eyes sparkled with a restored innocence, and their gestures revealed a security they had never known. Despite a painful past marked by absence and rejection, they were slowly learning what it meant to belong, to trust, and to be cared for. Connor watched from the corner of the room, dressed in a light shirt and jeans, posture relaxed but eyes observant of vulnerability few had ever seen. He still felt like an outsider to this new dynamic, as if learning to be part of a family he himself had once hesitated to form. The usual rigidity in him was giving way to a man willing to listen, to fail, and to try again, even if it meant facing his own ghosts. Elena sat on the sofa and let out a soft sigh, a mix of relief and hope. "I got the confirmation today," she said, turning to Connor, her eyes reflecting the fading light of the day. "I've been accepted to study child psychology at the university. And, to my surprise, they offered a scholarship that covers most of the costs." Connor smiled a true, proud smile that wasn't just about academic success. It was the smile of a father figure witnessing someone he believed in take flight. "You deserve that. And so much more," he replied firmly. "You showed me what I couldn't see, what was missing in this house all along." She took his hand gently. "I never imagined someone like you would believe in me like this, would invest in my education, in my dream. I didn't just invest in you," sighed, holding her hand tighter. "I invested in the chance to rebuild what we failed to protect. I invested in the girls, in who they can become, and in what we might become together." At that moment, the silence between them spoke louder than any words. A silence filled with promises of new beginnings and the courage to embrace the imperfections life had placed in their path. Later, as the day drew to a close, Connor asked Elena to join him in the garden. They sat beneath a blooming tree where the air felt lighter, more hopeful. "I don't want to ask you to date me," he said, his gaze fixed on the sky painted by the last colors of dusk. "Not for a label or an easy promise. I want to ask for something simple, but that means everything to me." She looked at him, heart beating faster. "I want you to give me the chance to try being a family with you. Our way. Imperfect, messy, sometimes difficult, but ours." Elena smiled, moved. "I accept," she said, feeling like all the pieces were finally falling into place. The twins, who had been eavesdropping from a distance, came running to them, grabbing their hands and filling the garden with joy. What once had been a house full of cold walls and painful silences was now becoming a home built on presence, care, and love one day at a time. And the moral of the story came through as clearly as the sunset light. True love doesn't have to be perfect. It demands courage. The courage to stay, to give, and to begin again even when everyone else has already walked away. And sometimes, it's the housekeeper who cleans far more than just the floors. She cleans the heart of an entire home. So, what did you think of this story? I'd really love to hear from you. Leave a comment below with a rating from 0 to 10 telling us how much this story touched your heart. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to like the video and share it so more people can be inspired by this true tale of love and resilience. Make sure to subscribe to the channel and follow along for more incredible stories. And before you go, I've already prepared another heartwarming story that's sure to move you even more. Stay tuned and see you next time.